It is Friday, August 1st, 2008. My name is Steve Brown. We are in Louisville, Kentucky. We're with the Cantigny First Division Oral History Project, and we are here today with the Reverend Gary Dyer. Reverend Dyer, can you spell your last name for us, please?
Yes, sir. It's Dyer.
And where'd you grow up?
My birthplace is Scottsville, Kentucky, and after about 2 years we moved to Indianapolis, Indiana. And my mother said at that time, my father was in World War II, and after World War II, because there was no jobs that paid any money, they moved from Kentucky to Indianapolis, Indiana. And I was just, I have no remembrance of that place because of how young I was. And they weren't there very long. It would have been at the end of 47, they moved there. And my father took a job at Kingham & Company packing house in Indianapolis. Like I say, they weren't there very long, and Mom said he worked second shift, that he gave her a hug, gave me a kiss on the forehead, just a baby, and went out the door on Fletcher and Span Avenue walking to work, and 2 blocks away, 2 young boys were going to rob somebody, shot him, killed him in an ambush style thing. And then my mother took him back to Scottsville, Kentucky. He's buried there at Walker's Chapel. And like I say, I have no remembrance of that. I have photos and things and lots of unanswered questions. But somehow we ended up, evidently they moved back to Indianapolis. I had an aunt and uncle living there at the time, and of course it was jobs and financial things that caused the move. And my mother had met a wonderful man, the name of William Leroy Dyer, who was he was a Marine in World War II. And she met him, fell in love, they married, and he gave me his name of Dyer. I did fail to mention that my Christian given name was Gary Brooks. But like I said, I can't remember anything, so I've always been a Dyer. And Bill Dyer was a wonderful man. He's the only dad I ever knew, and I wouldn't trade him for anything. And he's been dead 2 years, July the 29th.
Do you know where he served in World War II?
No, I don't. He fought the Japanese, but he never spoke about it. He was a very kind, friendly guy. Everybody liked him. But as far as World War II, he never spoke about killings and death. I think the only thing that was ever said that I heard one time in a conversation that if you lived a minute or 2 on the beach, you had a good chance of getting off. That's all But he never shared any stories, nothing. But we were always kind of a military family. All my uncles in Kentucky, they served in World War II. The Marines, the Army. I had an uncle in the Navy. So I had uncles that fought the Germans, and some fought the Japanese, and it's just progressed on. We didn't start out to say we're going to be military, but my family's always been somehow in the military.
Okay. How is it that you joined the military?
Well, my father, Bill Dyer, being the Marine he was, always told me when I was younger, he said, "You're going to be in the Marines, right?" And I said, "Yes." And that gung-ho spirit, he kind of put that in me. But as I grew older and began to work, old enough to have a job and buy my own car, and I had a mother that would pray with me every night when I was little. I want to go back because my mother, every night as a little fella, I can remember every night, we would get on our knees and pray. So I had a mother that put that value of prayer, that value of Jesus and of God in my life, because I lost it for a period of time, but that was still there somewhere, and I attribute that to her as that early child praying every night. So as I grew older, I had it in me. I wanted to go in the Marines, but I don't want to hurt anybody. I'm a peace-loving guy. I just want to work and just be a regular guy, and that was the thing about it. Well, he was he didn't stay after me, but he really wanted me to join the Marines, and I said, Dad, I really don't want to go. I don't want to hurt anybody. So in that hesitation process, I was working at Cummins for a year, Cummins Engine Company there in Seymour. Had my own little apartment, had my own car, and like I say, peace-loving. And I come home one night about midnight on second shift, and there was a letter that said, greetings. Your friends and neighbors have selected you. And I thought, what friends and neighbors? So actually, between wanting to join the Marines and not join the Marines, in that process, I was drafted. So being a young man, I didn't think, well, I could go join something. I just thought I'm stuck. And there was no way out. And my dad said, it's your duty. And I said, yes, sir. I mean, I wasn't a coward. But I really had it in me, what Mom instilled. I just didn't want to hurt anybody. So we always had a joke. They said, what's them 2 rubber marks going to the airplane? I said, that's my heel marks where they drug me in the plane. It wasn't that way, but I was drafted and taken, I did my basic at Fort Knox, Kentucky, which I thought at the time was kind of rugged. You know, I wasn't used to the push-ups and the running and stuff. I was in good shape. But I went in at 160 pounds, and they whittled me down to 145 and put me in a position where I could do anything. I felt like I could run forever, pull-ups, push-ups, set-ups, and I had a black DI, and I say that because not to
DI means
a drill instructor, and I say that because I'm not prejudiced at all, but for some reason the way they treated me, I thought, well, he don't like me because he's black and I'm white. But I found out later that didn't have anything to do with it. And my thought was this: when he said, you better learn everything I'm going to teach you because you're going to Vietnam, I looked at the guy next to him and I said, he don't know what he's talking about. I am not going to Vietnam. I'm a peace-loving man. But of course, as you can tell, I did go. And I found out at the end of basic that my drill corporal came to me and he said, I know you think you hate Sergeant Langley. His name is Sergeant Lee Langley. And I would love to find the man today. I have his picture in my office at church hanging on the wall. And that's how the view is today that I have toward the man, because my drill corporal said, he's already been there one time and he knows what it's like and he knows you're going, and he wanted you to know everything that would help you stay alive. So instantly, that last day in basic, my whole opinion changed toward that drill instructor. I thought, man, he's trying to help me the whole time, and I just didn't realize it. So he was good at what he did. He got me in good shape. He told me I was going. Of course, we worked with an M14 then. I became very proficient with an M14. I mean, you could knock down a target at 500 meters once you zeroed it in, and they proved to me that I could do what needed to be done. And I could do things I never could do. I could run, I could jump, I could climb, and very good training. And I remember being talked to at Fort Knox, and they said, what would you like to do? And I said, well, the Hell on Wheels tank division was there at Fort Knox, and I said, I like those tanks. I want to be in tanks. And they said, okay, good. And so the second question was, so where would you like to be stationed? I said, well, right here at Fort Knox, because this is where the tanks are, and my home is now in Indiana. It's close to my home. And they said, great. Well, at the end of basic, they sent me to Fort Polk, Louisiana, which was about 1,000 miles away, I imagine, and put me in 11B10, 11 Bravo, which is infantry. And once you get infantry, you are there. And,
so you did your AIT at Fort Polk?
Fort Polk, Louisiana, and they always told us, whatever you do, don't get sent to Fort Polk. And I thought, wow. So I actually had orders for Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which was artillery. So I thought, well, if I'm going to Vietnam, that's better than Fort Polk, because you get all these horror stories of how bad it is at Fort Polk. Everybody's saying, don't go there. Whatever you do, don't go there. So when I passed my, I can't remember the name of the test at the end of basic, you go through your dummies with your bayonet training and all that. Last day, you blacken your face and your gas mask, and just to see how aggressive you are, have you learned what they've taught you? And I did really good, because he called 8 guys out. And we were basically probably the 8 of the most aggressive guys in that outfit. And I'm not bragging, I'm just saying I missed bed check one night. And if you've ever missed bed check in basic training, you know it's probably close to the end of your life. We were mischievous. We didn't cause trouble, we were just mischievous. I missed bed check. We slipped down there, and I thought, well, instead of cleaning the 14, I'll go get some 3-2 beer. And I thought, well, old Dyer's pretty cool. I'm drinking a little beer down at the PX while them other duds is cleaning their rifle. And I didn't miss it again, because I spent all night cleaning out a garbage cans with a toothbrush and brass soap. And the next morning, when I was done and I cleaned it out, there were 4 of us that night together. I said, surely they won't make us go to training. And brother, I'm telling you, bam, we were right back out there. And it taught me a lesson that don't do that again. But what they were trying to do was instill the discipline in us, and I didn't realize it, for what I was going to need when I went to war. So that very last day, when we did so great, they called 8 of us out. And I thought, well, what do we do now? See, because now those 8 guys, I have no idea today where they're at. I can remember a couple names, but and I'll share that with you. Hopefully I won't forget that. Why? Is because they separate you. They say you train together, you go together. Well, that didn't happen for us. So anyway, the 8 guys that he called out, he said, we're marching the outfit back. You guys go down to that building right down there. Report to that building. And he marched the whole unit off. And I thought, well, what's up? Because we've never been left alone during this whole 8 weeks of basic. So I go down there, but I'm cocky, because I've got the John Wayne look. You know, I've got the black on my face, the bayonet and all that. And I'm thinking I'm John Wayne by now. So I pushed the door open and I walked in, and all these little guys in the office see, well, I'm John Wayne. And I said, Private Dyer reporting here. Sergeant Lee Langley. He said, oh, okay. So there was all 8 of us piled in there like we're something. And he flips open the stuff, and he gets out the paperwork like you've got there. And he pulls out this enormous stamp. And I'm trying to look at it upside down. And I'm going, FT, P, O, F, Fort. I said, no, not Fort Polk. He said, that's right. You've all been... The very last day we're changed to Fort Polk, and I thought, oh no, my life's over. I thought, how could this happen? And all that John Wayne left. I was so beaten, and that guy just is smiling. Because they knew Fort Polk was supposedly a whole lot worse than Fort Knox. But I survived, and we did go to Fort Polk for 9 weeks advanced infantry training. And I got a 30-day leave, went home, and the family I was with, I was married before the war, very young, and I'm not saying anything about that except when I came back from Vietnam, she wasn't who I thought she was, and I sure wasn't who that she married. And today, that's why she's not here, because she'd come tell you probably horror stories. Waking up in the middle of the night and all kind of crazy stuff, and just, oh, maybe we'll talk about that later. But anyway, Fort Polk, when you pull up there and you're out, it's like basic all over again. You're out, they're screaming, hollering at you. And it's a place that I remember well that you don't walk once you get to Fort Polk and you go into what's called Tigerland. Now today I'm thankful that I can say I was at Fort Polk Tigerland, because people say, ooh, and I don't brag about that, but when I went through that thing, I thought, why do they call it Tigerland? It's because you're going to growl like a tiger, and you will run your whole tour there. As long as you're there, even off duty, you do not walk. So it's a running facility. You will run in place, you will run to wherever you're going. When they give you a day and a half off duty, like Saturday at noon and Sunday, you run everywhere you go. And if you're caught walking, you'll be doing push-ups forever, and so it's just running. But the whole thing, my view today is, I thought they were terrible with me then, but I can tell you today, Steve, the whole view of that thing was they had to prepare us for that war. And the only way to do it was to get it into your mind and get it into your heart that this is what you had to do. Fort Polk was not only aggressive physically, but they were aggressive mentally. On our barracks, they had billboards that were probably, I'm going to say maybe 3 or 4 foot wide, 6 foot long, not enormous billboards, but I call them billboards, on the corners of the barracks. And I used to think that, why did they do that? Because they're working on your mind, because they're preparing you for war. Now, I'm not telling you it's good, because I told my mother what she did in 17 years, Uncle Sam rearranged in 17 weeks.
What did the billboards say?
One of them was, it would have their full color, painted. They had an American soldier there with a North Vietnamese head. Of course, we used a slang word. And he had his head where it had been cut off, the blood's dripping down. It'd say, "Kill the Kong." And I'm not trying to put them down, but I said, when you take a young man that's 18 and begin to work on him physically and mentally, and you begin to hammer, if you will, that in his mind, for a guy like me, it radically changed my life, because by the time the 9 weeks were done, I was convinced that that little yellow guy was the enemy, that he was no good, and he had to die. And I knew that I'm the guy that's supposed to do it. Of course, everybody was trained that way. We were supposed to go and do that. If we didn't, communists were going to take over the country. It was going to be terrible. You've got to kill him, whatever it takes. So I'm only saying that, not lifting me up. I'm just saying what happens to an 18-year-old boy in 17 weeks, that I got a 30-day leave, and I was drinking beer by then. I was smoking cigarettes. I had developed some nice cuss words. And
Learned them from Sergeant Langley?
No, he was, I look back at Sergeant Langley, he was a trooper. That guy was tough as nails. He could run up beside me, and I thought he looked old. Now, he was probably maybe in his 30s, maybe like that. But, you know, me being young like that, he would run up beside me and holler. And I thought, well, this guy looks kind of old. How's he keeping up with us? And he could run up and run all the way around the platoon and holler at us. And he ran up beside me and one time in basic, and he said, "Where in the H did you learn to march?" Well, I was a drummer in band, so I knew all the moves, which was a plus, because I could do left face, right face, about face. That helped me without realizing it. But I said, "Band, sir," and he said, "What in the H is band?" I said, "It's just band." But I knew all the moves. And believe it or not, somewhere in the middle of that training, thinking that man hated me, he called me out of formation, because one time he made me dry shave, you know, where you stand in front of the guys with just a razor. And I couldn't find any hair, but he made me dry shave anyway. And I thought, man, this guy's bad news. Push-ups. So he calls me out one day and he said, "Dyer, you can't shave. Can you drive a blank truck?" And I said, "Sir, yes, sir," and didn't know what to say, you know. And he said, "Then get your butt over to the motor pool and check out a truck, a 3/4 ton truck." And I said, "Where's the motor pool?" He said, "Get your butt." Back then they used language, you know. So I took off a run and not really knowing where I'm going, and I ran and ran. I saw a bunch of trucks, and I ran over there, and I said, Sergeant Lee Langley told me to come get it. The guy said, okay, come out here. He showed me the truck, how to turn it on. Here's your trip ticket. Keep it clean. Check the oil. Fill out everything, your mileage, everything, and get your butt out of here. Everything was... So I drive the truck back, and I get back there, and he did me a favor. He comes out, and he said, from here on out, you're going to be the ambulance driver. I said, sir? He said, throw your gear in the back. Every time we did a force march after that, you know those force marches, you do with all that gear on your back, and you're looking at the ground half the time. From then on out, he did me a favor because I'd go get a truck, put my gear in the back, and I would drive behind the force march, driving what they called the ambulance if somebody fell out. So I think even in the worst part of my whole tour, there were times when they were so good to me, brother, than they were other people, now that I look back. So I think God just put a little, I'm giving him the plug. That's the reason I'm here today. But I don't remember the drill instructor at
AIT.
At AIT because he too was tough. He had a face like stone, but he had no love for anybody. All I remember, he was a very mean man. Don't even remember his name, and it's just a tough place. Fort Polk was a tough place. Even to get to eat, you would have to turn around, and I'd have to turn around in line. This is how I learned the phonetic alphabet. Now, I learned it fast because if you were behind me in line, I'd have to turn around and do Bravo, Romeo, Oscar, Whiskey, November, your last name. And if I couldn't do it, they would make me go to the back of the line, and sometimes you didn't get to eat. So I'm just telling you, I learned that phonetic alphabet so fast because by the time you come to eat, you're hungry. You got to get something to eat. So you do the phonetic alphabet, you do the guy behind your name. If you can't, you're out of line. You go through 14 parallel bars to get into the chow hall, and you growl like a tiger. So all the time I'm eating, I'm sitting in there, somebody's going, rah, 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 rah. If you don't growl loud enough, they send you to the back. And the threat of not getting fed would cause you to get with the program. And the cooks, I hated the cooks. Forgive me, I don't now, but I hated the cooks. They big, burly, loud-mouthed, nasty cooks running through there. Eat, move out, shut up. And if they didn't like you, if you wasn't doing something right, you had to sit up. They'd tell you to get out of their chow hall and you'd miss food again. I hated the cook. So when I left for Vietnam, I said, I'm going to kill that cook. Pardon my language, I wouldn't do it now, but I said, that cook's dead. If he shows up in Vietnam, I'll kill him myself. That's how bad the cooks were. But those experiences, I can look back now and kind of laugh about them because no matter how tough it was, I look back now, somebody was sent to help me to stay alive in Vietnam. Everything that they did, of course my view's better now, but I look back now and like my little friend there, so many guys that I had with me didn't make it, and they told me when I got there, said, you got a 50% chance of staying alive, so you better know what you're doing. And I was going, oh, okay. So that's my training, as intense as it was, no matter how I felt back then, was geared toward helping me to get there and stay alive. And I love the training now. I love those guys that trained me. I think maybe one thing that was done wrong by the service, I think they used alcohol as a morale factor. And I know it sounds like I'm pointing fingers, but I'm not really, because I'm the one that drank. But when you're there and you're going through tough training and they release you at Saturday at noon and they don't want to see your ugly face until Monday formation, you've got nothing to do, but you can run down the street. And they had a little house there inside the fort that they had just left. And it had a fence, great big fence in it, and a great big yard, enormous backyard, all fenced in. Well, when you went in the front door of that house, you go through bars, lines, and it full of coolers. You could get any kind of drink you wanted, any kind of beer, probably known to man then. and you get as much as you want, all you wanted. When you got the back door, they had a guy at the back door, and you paid him a little cash register, and then you went out back and got drunk. I could do what I wanted as long as I didn't get arrested or didn't hurt any of my own men. So that didn't work very well for a young guy. Just, you know, they say you're going to Vietnam and you might die. I think I didn't have a great relationship with the Lord then. I kind of forgot about him. And I'll share more with that about even going to Vietnam. I had the feeling that God would not be in Vietnam. He's in America. That's why I had things totally wrong. So I began a national smoking campaign and a drinking campaign in training, especially in advanced infantry. But I tell you, everything they did was, besides those things, was good training. It was taught. We taught jungle warfare while I was there. They had BC villages set up. Some of the training was like World War II, where you'd run and throw hand grenades and stuff like that. But everything was beneficial. I mean, you know, they taught you get that pen out, what to do, how to do that, how to take a life. I had a hand-to-hand combat instructor that was, I believe he was from Puerto Rico, and he was probably as tall or shorter than myself at that time. But he's the toughest little fellow you ever meet, because when we had our hand-to-hand at first instruction, everybody was in bleachers outside sitting there, and he said, who's the toughest man in this platoon? We had a guy named Tennessee that could already do 50 push-ups, and big, tall like you, and just muscle fellow already. And everybody, of course, looked at Tennessee. He said, well, I guess I am. He said, you come down here. Well, Tennessee had training, and he knew evidently some hand-to-hand stuff and things like that. I don't know what all. But this little Puerto Rican guy says, here's the 14. He gave him the 14 with a bayonet on the end. And he said, we'll take the bayonet sheath off. And he said, you take that 14. And he said, you come running at me with that 14 like you're going to stick me with it. He's a tough guy. Well, Tennessee didn't want to do that. He said, no, I don't want to. He said, come on, you tough guy. So he began to razz him until he got to the point. He said, I'm telling you, called him a few names, you come at me. Oh, so he got ready, and Tennessee was mad. Well, when he come at him to get him with that bayonet, I'm not sure how he did it, but quicker than I could move. The little Puerto Rican guy had him going over on his back, had the 14 and the bayonet. He said, you dead. So that's how good he was. But Tennessee was good enough in his instructions and his skills that a little bit later, this guy began to use him to actually help the other guys. That's how good he was. So we had good hand-to-hand instruction. It was all geared down. The only thing I remember is toward the end of the cycle, I would have liked to have more with the M16. We did a lot of training with the M14. I could hit anything with a 14, and all of a sudden one day they said, okay, we're going to train you with the M16. And bam, here's this little black weapon, and they took us in a room and sat down and take it apart, put it back together, take it apart. They were showing you how to do it, put it back together, and after a while he said, you take it apart, put it back together, put it back. And he said, we're not leaving this room until you can do it proficiently. We were in kind of like a gymnasium. And we worked on that 16 till I thought, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? Well, now today I'm telling you it's because there come a time on a battle that my 16 jammed on me. And I was already close to maybe freaking out, but I didn't freak out because some of those things kind of like kick in. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And so does that make sense? That what they were doing then, they knew that probably if I got out there, I may have problems.
So you got in that situation and you broke your gun down?
Yes,
based
sir.
on the training you had?
It got lodged up, and I couldn't get it done. I broke it down, and I took that. I remember pulling that. I was so mad and so scared, I threw the magazine. I threw the magazine physically away, and then was able to dislodge that bullet. That somehow got hung in there. I don't know how, but I was able to dislodge that bullet, get her going again, put another magazine back in it, and I'm ready to roll. So
You got done with your AIT. You got a 30-day leave, right?
yes, sir. 30 days.
What happens after that? After the 30-day leave?
I reported back to Fort Dix, and I had to be there a certain day, certain time. Fort Dix, New Jersey, which I'd never been to before, but it was I believe it was a big leaving place where the guys would congregate and they'd get them all together and then fly them out. We were on a plane of maybe 200 and some guys, I think, then. So that's...
And they flew you to...
The route, we left Fort Dix, and I believe the first stop was Fairbanks, Alaska, if I remember right. And from Fairbanks, we went to Yokota, Japan, which I think is that an air base, I believe. It may not even be there now, but it was Yokota, Japan. And both places that we landed, we just landed there for a short time, got off. I don't know what they were doing, but anyway, they herded us back on. Same at Japan. We got off, and I was amazed because for an 18-year-old boy, I saw my first Japanese cooking a hamburger there, and I thought, wow, you know, there's a Japanese guy, you know. So I was amazed at things that I had never really seen before, you know, coming from Kentucky as a little boy and in Indiana, and I thought, wow, here I am in Japan. How'd I get here? So we were there long enough maybe to grab something to eat back on the plane, and then we landed at Bien Hoa Air Force Base in Vietnam. And this one thing I do remember, the stewardess flying into Vietnam, however long that took. I don't know if that's about a 4 or 5 hour flight maybe. But anyway, she was so kind. She came back and she said, "Would you like something to drink?" And I said, "Can I get a drink?" Because we hadn't been asked that before. She said, "Yeah, what do you want?" And I said, "Well, what do you got?" And she said, "I'll give you a mixed drink if you want it." And I said, "Sure." So I told her what I wanted, and they actually let us have a couple of mixed drinks. I mean, we didn't get drunk or crazy or nothing, but we had a few drinks, and that mellowed me out a little bit. And I believe she did that because she knew where we were going. I didn't realize it at the time. But when they landed, the plane's air conditioning, and I've had 2 or 3 drinks, and I'm mellowed out, and she's shaking her hand and being real kind to us, you know. And I looked out on the tarmac, and I see something out there doing this, and I said, "Well, what is that?" Well, what I didn't realize, it was the heat waves off that tarmac, because when I stepped from the air-conditioned plane into the air of Vietnam, I about passed out. I mean, it was like that. And I tell people my first enemy in Vietnam was the heat. That was my enemy. So I stepped out onto the tarmac and suffered. I mean, we had on these short sleeve light brown uniforms, and they were just soaked in a matter of minutes. Nowhere to get water. I'm so thirsty. I thought, man, I got to have water. And they take us out, and they start putting us on buses. And I pile on this bus. I said, "Man, you got any water?" "Nah, the old sergeant, he needs a shade." He said, "Ain't no water. He'll get water later." And so I get on the bus. I'm sitting. The bus is unreal hot. And I look up, and there's bars on the windows of this bus. And I look out, and I said, "Hey, Sarge," I said, "how come I'm a new guy, you know. Why you got bars on the windows?" He said, "That's to keep them," of course they call them gooks, but I mean North Vietnamese or VC from throwing hand grenades in through the window and killing you. I thought, hey, wait a minute. I'm a peace-loving guy. You see, all the time they trained me to kill somebody, but I'm telling you, inside of me, there was always a little something that said, you really don't want to do this. I mean, I did my job, and I did it well, but there was something, I hope that's registering while we're taping this, that it's something always, maybe Mama instilled it and the Lord put it in there, but I really didn't want to hurt people. So we rode that bus into Zion, which was the main division base camp for the First Infantry. And I rolled right in there we get off, they line us up for formations, and it is unreal hot. I mean, I think there was a few guys maybe even passed out, but it was so hot. And I said, we got to have some water. Now you imagine no water on the plane, just a few drinks and all this time. So my feeling was that when I got off the plane, they would give me a 16, they would give me combat gear. I'm in a war. Well, nobody's giving me nothing, see, but a hard time. So they take me down to 90th replacement, which was at Zion. And it's getting toward the end of the day. By the time the further we went, it's getting toward the end of the day. And they took me. Now, this is a truth, and I'm not throwing rocks, but it was looked like a concrete building with windows in it and nothing over the windows, and bunks with blankets that probably felt like they hadn't been cleaned in years. There was sand on the floor. It was a filthy place, I thought. It was just dirty, I thought. And by the time we got into that bunker place there, we had no 16s, and I'm waiting on water, and I thought, what is going on? Well, here I am, and they start mortaring the airstrip. The very first, my evening in Vietnam, they mortared the airstrip, and that shakes all us guys up. But I can hear to tell you, it was so far away, you could hear the mortars, but you couldn't have caught shrapnel from it unless you ran straight toward it. But I didn't know that. I'm a new guy. And I thought, man, what is the matter with these people? No water, no 16s. I said, what if the Vietnamese run in here and kill us? And we had all kind of silly thoughts. So anyway, we survived that night, and they took us down and back to, there was buildings called records and different buildings like that. I just have a remembrance in my mind of a records building. And they took us down there, and they had formations, and the next morning had formations, and they said, we're going to assign men to individual units. Now there's 4 of us that trained together. So I figured 4 of us had made it to Vietnam. Surely they'll keep us together. We know each other, we trained together, they'll keep us together. Well, they separated all 4 of us. Dale Ney, who now lives in Indianapolis, Indiana, he took off. They called him for the 9th. And I shook his hand. I said, I'll see you, Brother Day, on the way he went. And then Patton and Leidy, they called them, and they took them back. I found out later they put them in records. And they called my name and put me in the First Infantry, 1st of the 28th Black Lions. And like I say, they separated us, and I haven't seen Leidy since. I've seen Patton one time, and Dale, I've saw him a few times. He was out 6 months in the bush, and his feet got messed up, and they brought him in, but he did make it home. But that's the way my tour began. They separated us, and I don't know what the purpose of that was, unless they had something in their minds that you didn't need to be together or something. But so I was taken down to processing, which was probably like the other gentleman said, G1 and G2 and those, because when I got there, I was given my gear, the helmet, the full armor that it took to survive, plus an M16. And our outfit, it was mandatory you carry 14 magazines, I believe it was, if I remember right. That's neither here nor there, but I think you had to carry 14. There were certain rules in First Infantry that you just kind of picked up and remembered. But anyway, I once I got all my gear, I got my new boots on, new combat boots, black and green, and my new uniform, that cotton, you know, and I got all suited up for war. Well, I'll tell you what, I thought I was ready, but I found out when they put me on a helicopter and said you're going out, I was the only new guy going out that day, so they shipped me out to the 1st of the 28th that was digging in the jungle. Now I spent a lot of time in the jungle, real thick jungle, sporadic jungle, walking in water, clean water, nasty water. But I spent a lot of time in jungle warfare. I spent my whole tour out there. I never took an R&R, and I never left, and I had a reason for that. Maybe I can share with you later. But my introduction was being choppered out, and they landed, And they motioned for me to get off, so I jumped off and ran off, and the helicopter takes off. And well, there I stand with all my gear, and I'm looking over there, and all I see is the defensive perimeter where they're digging in. They've already done their foxholes, and they're making slit trenches between the foxholes. And I'm standing out there not knowing nothing of what to do. And this was my introduction. I thought, what do I do now? Just stand here and look, because there's concertina wire between me and them. And feeling really like a dud, all of a sudden this lieutenant makes his way through the wire. They've got a little place you can kind of, I guess, unhook the stuff. And he makes his way through the concertina wire, and he runs up to me. And this was my introduction. He said, "Welcome to the Bloody Red One." And instantly I knew, wow, I thought maybe I'm in the wrong place, because he was gung-ho, and that's the introduction. Well,
Do you remember his name?
no, I don't. He had a haircut like mine. He was gung-ho. I mean, he was ready. But also, I thought he was a fanatical individual when I first met him, but there was a spirit. It's kind of like I was telling you about basic, you know, how they try to instill that. They were instilling in us that there's a spirit with a big red one, that we are the best. You are big red one, you're the best that the Army has, and we're going to do a job, and we can do it no matter what. Well, they kind of, you get that, because I still have that today. If anybody asks me, I say, man, I love the big red one. It's one of the best, and I believe it is, not only because I say it. But we had that introduction, and he said, after that small get-together, he said, "I'm going to take you in and put you in a squad." And he said, "Are you ready to kill somebody?" And I couldn't answer him. And no matter what kind of training that they gave me, I couldn't answer him, because I thought, well, he said, "Well, you better be ready to kill somebody, because they're ready to kill you." And I thought, oh, man, just put me back on the helicopter. You know, I served my country, but I just didn't quite have that nature yet. I just couldn't figure that out. So he took me in, and he assigned me to Sergeant Paul E. Raley at the time, who was a squad leader in Charlie Company, 3rd Platoon, 2nd Squad. Now, that's the one that I took over. So I remember that well, Charlie Company, 3rd Platoon, 2nd Squad. Well, the guys were gung-ho. Most of the guys had been there for quite a while, and I was the first new guy, and I could hear them holler, "Here's another blank new guy. You were an FNG." And I'm not going to go into what that stands for, but it's another new guy. So anyway, they said, "Get over there and start helping them guys." And nobody said anything to me. They didn't act very friendly, so I grabbed a shovel and I started digging. Now, you got to figure the first enemy's heat. So I'm trying to be obedient. I'm trying to be a good soldier. I start digging in, and I'm just digging and digging. He said, "You got to hurry up. The Gooks are coming tonight." The Vietnamese. And so we started digging and digging, and I tried the best I can. After a while, all of a sudden things turned white, and all I remember was, that's it. So I woke up, and there was 2 ponchos tied together, and I was laying under that. I said, "What happened?" And the sergeant was sitting in the ammo box looking at me, and he said, "Well, you passed out. Don't worry, you'll get used to it." And I thought, it's the heat. I mean, I was doing this. I said, "It's the heat." And he said, "Here, just a little water." He said, "It's okay, it's okay." Well, for some reason, Sergeant Paul E. Raley sticks in my mind, because he took a liking to me. Now, let me tell you why. I'm giving him a plug now. He came to my house 37 years after the war, and we both cried. And if I do that now, forgive me, but he said this to me, and it's the same reference, almost like my drill instructor did in basic. He said this: "You listen to what I'm going to tell you, and you watch what I do, and I'm going to try to help you stay alive before I leave." And I said, "Okay." And the first patrol we took out, Sergeant Raley said, they usually put a new guy either on point or flank. I don't know if the other gentleman discussed that, but when you move out on patrols, you'll have a point man and 2 flank men. And then you'll have your squad leader and the radio man. Then your probably your machine gunner maybe, and then your 79, and then guys doing up your rear guard. But instead of putting me on point or flank, he said, you can't pace today. So I was taught to count pace. You know, every 100 meters I would take 123 steps, and that was 100 meters for me. So he said, you let me know till we get I think it's 700 or 800 meters, you let me know. And I said, okay. I'm still a new guy. I've got a lot of training, but I've still got a lot to learn. So he puts me behind him and his radio man, and we go out on this patrol. Now, we're all ready for the enemy, and we're ready to fight, but I'm going along counting. I got to keep, because if I lose track, we'll be in the wrong place. So I'm trying to keep track of 800 meters. So every 100 meters, I had a little string, I tie a knot, and I'm going along. Well, we didn't make the 800 meters. The point man, where probably I might have been if Sergeant Rayleigh hadn't took a liking to me for some reason, the point man hit a booby trap. I don't know who else got hurt, but there was this horrendous explosion, a lot of hollering, and I just stood there for a minute. It's a shock. I didn't even move, and all of a sudden Rayleigh grabbed me and throws me to the ground. He said, open fire. And boy, there was, because they thought, you know, maybe there's more VC, I guess, but we just fired and fired. It just scared me to death. Well, when they ceased fire, we had security out both sides, and they ran up and stuck the point man with morphine, and he stopped hollering. And to this day, I still remember that first patrol, because that might have been me. But like I say, my whole tour was kind of like that. But they called the dust-off in, the dust-off helicopter. He was really bad. They got him out. I never saw him again. Not sure whether he lived or died, but never saw him. That's why I say guys are there and then they're gone. You never know. Sometimes where a guy's lived or he died right there, or you be with a guy and all of a sudden, bam, he's gone, he's wounded. It's just so quick. You don't have time to react. I don't have time to suffer over your loss or whatever. You're just there and you're gone. So a lot of times you didn't get real close. Now, I got real close to Stevie there because he was a great guy. And Daryl also, they carried my machine gun for me. So they were really good guys. They didn't smoke, they didn't cuss. Daryl, they're just great guys, and I liked them. I said, here I was, ragtag, roughing a junkyard dog by then, and they're just good guys. And when they both died, it really got a hold of me. So I don't have a picture of Daryl, but I've got one of Steve's that somehow survived, and I keep it on my desk just to remember. This one here, okay. Yeah, his name is, and I believe...
Which one is Steve?
Steve is on the right. Of course, I'm a little bit thinner. They whittled me down to 123 pounds in 6 months over there.
And how much did you weigh when you went in?
160. Yeah, 160, I believe it was. But I can remember we did a 6 months physical. They just checked for infected leech bites, things like that, and my weight had shrunk. But little Steve was from, I believe, from Washington. I tried to contact his parents, but they did not want any contact, and I understand that. I didn't pursue it any further. All I wanted to do was just tell him how good a guy he was. Super little fella. But he died during the Tet. That's when I lost most of the men out of my squad. I lost during Tet, because the whole tour, as far as I'm concerned, it got progressively worse. And I mean by the weapons they had, the more men. Of course, the North Vietnamese began to come down. Just more and more Chinese, Russian weapons, B-40 rockets, mortars on top of mortars. I think we were mortared incessantly. We were in one place mortared 3 times a day for about 11 days, and by the time you're biting your nails, you're mad because you want some payback. That's what it is. But we started at Phuc Vien. That picture was taken at a place called Phuc Vien, and like I say on my paperwork, we did a lot of S&Ds, search and destroy. And we would just, from Fook Bend, we did a lot of patrols out during the day, and then a lot of ambushes at night. Now, my whole tour, we did an ambush once a week. Every night an ambush went out. I don't care where you was at. If we were out in the jungle, dug in on top of a hill, or anywhere out in the jungle, we were dug in. Every night an ambush would go out. Every night they sent out some guys on ambush. In fact, I had a little over a week left in country. Like I say, I never took an R&R. My replacement was a sergeant already. He already had 3 stripes, and the squad came down and said, we won't go out with him. He don't know what he's doing. I said, I'm not leaving this hole. I said, I'm going home. I don't want to leave. I was getting tight. But I ended up taking an ambush out probably 2 weeks before I left country, maybe, because of the men. But then we left Fook Bend, and we were only there maybe 2 or 3 months. That place there.
Where'd you go from Fook Bend?
I went to Quan Loy, which was called the Red Dirt Hill. Went further north.
Terre Rouge.
I have trouble really telling you where it's at. I just know it was a big red dirt hill, and the First Infantry had a huge artillery unit there. That's all I remember about it. And the reason I say that is that even though these were our base camps, Quan Loy I saw maybe once a month, if we were lucky. Even being infantry, we did a lot of airborne assaults. Choppered in 5 at a time, jump off. If you get hit, fine. If you don't get hit, fine. Just get off, set up security until the whole company or the battalion, whatever's going in there, gets in. So we did airborne assaults more than I could even tell you, that I could even count. And Quan Loy, of course, being closer, I believe we were to the Cambodian border. We kept getting worse all the time. More action, more RPGs, more mortars.
RPG stands for?
Rocket propelled grenade, yeah. And we received a whole lot of those, just going down on patrols, RPG. And I say maybe they would shoot one and either hurt people or hurt or kill people and be gone. And I had the privilege of being back to Vietnam twice since the war. And I found out just exactly, probably 30 clicks from Quan Loy is the start of 200 miles of tunnels. There were 12,000 regular Viet Cong stationed there, and I wonder why we couldn't get rid of them. It's because they had underground escape routes, routes to get out, underground hospital. It's Chu Chi tunnels. You've probably heard of those. We call it the Chu Chi battlefield. One of our tanks is still sitting there. I say our tanks, I mean American tanks. So you can imagine if a tank's left, the ferocity of the battle that went on. It was just, the town was full of VC, tunnels everywhere, all the way even back into Saigon. They had tunneled that far. So little spider holes, I went back and looked at them. I said, no, I'm not climbing down into them. I probably couldn't got into them anyway. But they would just pop that spider hole up and back down and be gone. So that was a tough area. It just got worse and worse everywhere we went. I heard the last gentleman speak of Lai Kay. I spent time at Lai Kay only because we would chopper in, get off, and Lai Kay would let us go in and 55-gallon drum showers, a little water to wash that red dirt off of you, and get cleaned up a little bit, get some new ammo and some new hand grenades. And they had a little village there that was full of prostitutes and alcohol. And I guarantee you, I believe it was a morale factor that they took care of the girls there. I'm being pretty blunt, I'm sorry. They made sure that they did not have VD, and if one of the girls was found to have any kind of venereal disease, her picture was put up on the thing so you could go by and had her picture and her name. And she was put out of the club or whatever bar that was there. She would be put out of that until she was healed, or if she couldn't be healed, she was shipped off, I guess.
Who was responsible for that?
I guess the 9th Infantry. The Like was a 9th Infantry base.
So it was
And
the
it was
U.S. Army
yeah.
was moving.
They might not say that, but this little village, they actually built this enormous base around that little village like.
With 13 running right down through it, the highway?
Probably
Thunder
13,
Road?
yeah. 13, I was up and down Highway 13 a bunch. But we would stop there and maybe get a day or two to chill out a little bit. And again, as long as I didn't hurt anybody or hurt any of my own men, they didn't care what I did.
What sorts of things did guys do in that situation, other than visit prostitutes?
That and drink. Now you did find, they talk about a lot of drugs, but I didn't see a lot of drugs. I mean, a lot of guys drank, I'll be honest with you. I made a lot of patrols with I called it liquid courage. Now I didn't go on patrols, but I'd carry a little bottle of something and a block of C4 in this one, that plastic explosive. And I always told people, I said, it's my courage. It was that liquid courage that I thought that I needed. And I've always wondered about that because, inside of me, it's still there today. I don't want to hurt anybody. But I did. I became very, I think it's because when you see your men get killed, you see guys get killed horrendously, and you want to pay back. You see guys get killed on patrol and you can't find anybody. Stepping on booby traps. You could pick up a booby trap about anywhere and you get so mad and so scared, you get a little aggressive. So I never did no drug thing. I seen a few guys smoke dope, but there was a lot of drinking. And they would let us get drunk.
You mentioned earlier the first time you went out on patrol, Sergeant Rayleigh put somebody else at point.
Right, yes, sir.
He ends up pretty critically wounded.
Yes, sir.
What was the first time you witnessed death?
It wasn't too long. I believe the first death that I can remember was during a mortar attack, if I remember right. And seeing guys, even out there, they would put a poncho, in the mornings, you'd climb out of them holes and they would put a poncho over them and try to get helicopters in there pretty quick to pick up the dead. The wounded were the first. Yeah, sometimes the VC, a partner, I call them gooks, but I don't mean to do that, but we would drag them down and just dig shallow holes and throw them in. Just throw them right out in front of our holes sometimes. But one thing that they taught us, you don't leave a guy behind whether he's dead or wounded. You don't leave nobody behind. And I think probably the first death, now I believe the boy's name was Houghton that hit that booby trap. Whether he died or not, I don't know, but I do know when they put morphine in him, he just, and I knew he was hurt pretty bad. But anyway, I think it was the mortars, the first big mortar attack where you see guys, and I can share with you that sometimes we had artillery in the middle too, the 105 howitzers, and they dug those pits in, and they would fire for us while we're out. And I think that's some of the first death that I saw was by the mortars. And most of the time, I tell you what really brought the fear in me, because not only it was the mortars, but you could hear the tube. We were mortared close enough, you could hear the bloop, bloop, bloop. And that just brought fear immediately, because, here they come. And you'd try to find somewhere to hide, get in a hole or somewhere, and here they would come in, But I do know this, that after a while, your first death is it would have the same effect on me today if I went outside and saw somebody out there dead. It would just be really bad. But after a while, when you begin to see people hurt and killed and wounded in different ways, you become, I don't know if it's hardened or you just adjust, if I'm making sense.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's just because it's happening. And, you know, if you see a dead person, people would stop. Everybody would stop to try to see it.
Here today.
Yes. Say a wreck along the road. Everybody tries to stop to see the wreck. Well, if you see one every day, after a while you get to where you just drive by. You say, well, you know. When you've seen it all, without being very graphic, when you've seen it all, after a while, you're thinking, well, just thank God it ain't me. Does that make sense? I hate to say that. But after fighting for a while, I got real hard, I got real aggressive, and I made up my mind that I was going to do what it took to go home. There was something in there that's saying, if you stay alive to April the 23rd, 1968, you're going home.
So you knew the date that you were supposed to go home?
Yes, sir. They gave me that date.
When did they give you that date?
Well, the day, I left it out, but it was the day that lieutenant approached me. The one that, at the perimeter that said, are you ready to kill somebody, and gave me that speech. He looked at me and he said, you stay alive to April the 23rd, 1968, and you can go home. And it was like just a click. Something, a breath in me, that's just like that set. Like you do your timer on your stove. It's set, and I'm not kidding you, Steve, by the time of the 23rd, I climbed on a plane at 9:30 at night, and I said, get this SOB off the runway, because we're sitting out here in a plane at Benoit, and one rocket would kill all us guys. And they're all hollering because I'm on there with the infantry, cav, guys been in combat like myself. They want out of there. They said, get this, and they sitting on the tarmac in the dark. I'm thinking, how stupid can you be? One rocket. See, that's what we're thinking. Because they could put a 122 just about anywhere they wanted to and get away with it. I mean, just one and leave, which they did a lot. You heard the gentleman speak about Like A. That was called Rocket City. You got a rocket at breakfast, a rocket at lunch, and a rocket at supper.
Whenever you congregated.
Whenever you, any day, every day. What they would do, Steve, they would fire a 122 rocket into that, because I mean, they'd done it so much, they could just about say, well, let's throw one in toward the mess hall or something. And every time we were there, we stopped in. I hated the place, even though it had prostitutes and alcohol and maybe a shower, you know, but you knew there was going to be a rocket. You know, you just knew. You had to be prepared. And all of a sudden, you'd hear that shoo, that burning through the air, that thing crashing in, and I hit the ground. And one time they'd give me a hot meal. I just got that hot meal, and I remember I heard that thing shoo, and I dived under this truck and go whoa, and there's shrapnel flying everywhere, and I was laying there looking at that hot meal. I thought, well, there's a little bit left, but I thank God it didn't hit me. But see, it got to be so, Steve, that it didn't hit me, so you got up and went about your business. So I'm not saying death did not mean anything, but it became routine. Frequently, more and more. The longer I was there, the more death. The more you saw things. I mean, it just became like surviving a horrendous car wreck and getting up out of that and being able to walk away, and you'd be shaking, and I'm still alive. I mean, many times.
It's Friday, August 1st, 2008. This is Steve Brown. I'm with the Cantigny First Division Oral History Project. We are in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm speaking with Reverend Gary Dyer. And you have been sharing with us a little bit about some of your the effect of repeatedly seeing violence and death, the effect that had on your psyche, and you were saying that it hardened you to see that so routinely. Can you tell me a little bit about what you've mentioned? Night ambushes. What was that like? How did you guys do that?
Well, the night ambush, we would, if it was our turn, they would call down and say, Sergeant Dyer, you've got the ambush tonight, report to Command CP. That was in the middle of the perimeter. And I would go up there.
The perimeter of
Where we would dig in, we call it NDP, nighttime defensive perimeter.
okay.
And we did a lot of that, digging in and let them come to us and beat us up, tear up. Their goal was to break through, and after being there after a while, I knew what they were going to do. They would throw mortars and rockets in, and as soon as those mortars and rockets stopped, here come the ground attack. And they would send a small unit up one side to try to draw you that way, and then send a huge wave across the other side. Maybe say one to the west and then the other one from the south, maybe it's like that. And we had dug in, let's say, and we were ready to go, and they would call me up, and I would go up there and get in the command bunker, which was in the middle of our perimeter. It's the big bunker in the middle. Now this is where your captain and those that kept contact with all the squad leaders in the north, south, east, and west of that perimeter. And then, of course, we had concertina wire around, but we would go in and they would say, well, here's your map. We'd have a map of the area, and they'd say, well, here we are, say on top of this hill, say 891 or whatever it was called, they would be here. Now he said, I want you to take an ambush out 1,000 meters down to this trail, for example, which we did sometime, different trails, different things. He said, there's a trail down there where at night there's been VC movement through there, or whoever, troop movement, whatever, has been going through there, and go down and see if they come through, you can stop it. So we would begin to plan the ambush from there, how we were going to get out, and there's still daylight, what we would take, where we were going to be, the grid coordinates where we were at. Because when I got to that trail, I had to be in the right position, because I would put 3 men here if you had them, 3 men here, and 3 men behind, or how many ever men you had. You're supposed to have an 11-man squad, but that didn't happen all the time. You might get 11 and then bam, we would lose 2. So getting resupplied with men, especially the last 6 months that I was there, was a problem. I could get bullets, I could get hand grenades, but getting men and new boots, that'd be like pulling teeth without any numbing. Don't ask me why, I have my own opinion on that, but say if I had 9 men, I would put 3 here and 3 here along the trail, and 3 men back, covering my back side. Then we would run a claymore out this way, a claymore that way, and a claymore that way. But now, not to get ahead of myself, we would get with the squad, talk to the men about, we're going 1,000 meters out to this trail, we're going to go out maybe 500 meters this way, then we're going to cut and go 500 meters that way. So if we were being watched, we'd stop and wait a little bit. After 500 meters, we'd stop in the bush, be quiet for a little bit, see if there's any movement, and then we'd take an azimuth and cut back and get to the trail. So by the time I got to that trail, it was just about dark. I mean, it was all but dark. And I put 3 men here and 3 men there, and I would be in one of these positions here. And we'd put a claymore here, a claymore there, and a claymore there, and they would do the same this way. And then they would put a claymore there and a claymore there, and one. So we'd be kind of surrounded by claymores. Had a little clicker you plugged in, you flip a little wire up, it's a safety wire on your detonator. So if I flip that wire down and click that thing twice, that claymore goes out with a 50-meter killing radius with double-aught buck balls inside of C4. So up close, it did its job. So we would plan it out, made sure each man had a claymore, made sure he had his ammo, made sure he had water. You did an equipment check, you got all that prepared. And once you're prepared and everybody knew what we were doing, I did a last-minute check of each man. Of course, I made sure I had what I needed, and I had a map and I had a radio man. He carried the radio, and when I wanted it, he'd hand it to me. And we would go out, and they knew where we were at. I'd radio back. We'd maintain a radio until we got close to the ambush site, and then we would go into radio silence. And you could, when you did that, you would on your headset. every time you pushed it, it'd make a noise like that. And they'd say if you're close to your ambush site, radio silence, break squelch twice. I have trouble with that word. And you just So then we would set up, and once we got in position, it would be totally dark. And sometimes I'd take a poncho, cover myself, take a flashlight, look at that, and radio back. And I'm supposed to be, let's say, at 214907 grid coordinates. The reason that was so important, because they expect me to be there. Because when they break the first mortar out, they do this. They tell me they're going to fire a mortar, and I can adjust it in wherever I want if I want it. But they know I'm here. So they'll pop a mortar here, and if that's okay, and then they'll pop a mortar in B section. So they put mortars on all four corners of my ambush.
So that they know they can cover you if you come under attack.
And if I get to grab that horn and I say we blow the ambush and maybe we're under attack or can't get out, all I got to do is call for mortars, break radio silence, call for that mortar crew, and they'll hit A and B and C and D. And hopefully you're in the right spot. And which we were, thank God. But that was all planned, and we had it planned when we got there. And if we blew the ambush at night, if we had to, we'd on the squelch, and they'd say, if you have movement, break squelch once overnight. And they'd say, you're going to blow the ambush? If I had time. Sometimes in the dark, they would be there before you knew it. They were very skillful, a lot of those guys, what they were doing. And
They'd be in the VC.
Right, yeah. Some of them were very good. Some of them I thought did stupid stuff.
Such as?
Like come up the hill. I mean, it just, why would you do that? I mean, they're coming up this hill to take out your position, but you're right there, and you throw a hand grenade and take all 6 guys out at once. I mean, to me, I thought, that's insanity. I thought it was, but evidently they thought they could get up, and their goal is to bust through your nighttime defensive perimeter, to break through there, get to the middle, blow up your command bunker, put their flag up, take yours down, put theirs up. Because if they divide you, you're weaker. And of course, their goal is to take that perimeter. And I've been in positions where the next morning we had over 50 North Vietnamese dead inside the perimeter. They actually got inside. They didn't get out. But that's how horrendous that sometimes it can be. But that was the ambushes were conducted that way most of the time. And I spent a lot of ambush time out there sweating it out. And I thought, oh, boy, if they come this way, I'm gone. I just had that feeling. And they would break squelch with us, and they'd say there's movement this way and that way. Get ready to load up the ambush and get out of there. DD-mal, they said, get ready to DD-mal. That means get your backside out. And I thought, oh, man, if they come this way, we're dead, because there's just a few of us out here. They'll run us over. But thank God they turned. That VC unit turned, or the North Vietnamese, and I was always able to get out, even if we blew the ambush. That usually in every ambush I was in, when we blew those claymores, and that did it. I mean, you figure 6, 12 claymores. If you got that many set up going off, you're going to do some damage, and that usually took care of business. We took an ambush up. I radioed. I went broke squelch, and he said, "Are you ready to bring the ambush in?" And he said, "Okay, you can break radio silence and roll up the ambush and come in." So the men knew we were coming in. Well, we were rolling up claymores, and I look, and here come 3 Vietnamese walking down that. It was actually a trail by a rubber plantation, walking down the trail. And I thought, well, do I pop a cap on these guys or let them go? And I said, we got 3 Vietnamese coming. They had looked like they had shorts on, but no combat gear. But they had on green hats and stuff, like like maybe a soldier would wear. I said, you want me to pop a cap on them? He said, negative, negative, negative. He said, stop them. Of course, some of the guys wanted to shoot them, even though they didn't have weapons. I said, here they are. They're coming along. They're just mocking you. So we ran out and stopped them, and they act like they didn't care, but they had these little ID cards. And how they get them, I really don't know. But if they had an ID card, I couldn't do anything to them. And they got out them ID cards, showing them. And I thought, oh, I wanted to ice that guy so bad. That was back then. Now you understand. It's the situations where a lot of guys were getting hurt, and they were letting these guys go because they had ID cards. And that made me so angry. Some of the guys said, why don't we just shoot them? I said, no, even if I want to, we would probably get found out. So they let them go and probably to fight us again. But anyway, that's the way our ambushes run. Like I say, in the field, an ambush went out every night. I was 3rd platoon, 2nd squad. If mine went out the next night, 1st squad. Or they were going out to the north. They were going out maybe to the south. Somebody was on ambush somewhere if you were out and dug in.
Now, at an NDP, is this a company strength, or is it platoon?
Can be. Can be whatever they put in it.
Okay.
We did it, you know, in Boy Scouts they used to have capture the flag. Well, they would chopper us out. And sometimes they choppered us out and we would get off ready to fight and there was no enemy. So once all the units got in, helicopters come in 5 at a time. And when they land, you've only got about 14 seconds to get your backside off. They're taking off. So you get off, you get out security, so you wait until the whole unit's there. It could be maybe they choppered a platoon out. Usually a company, or it could be a battalion, but they would chopper you out and sometimes they'd say, we're not going to stay here, form back up together and let's move. Well, you formed in 2 files, 10 feet apart, and then you would begin to move out and we would walk maybe 1,000 to 5,000 meters, 5,000 clicks, go a click or 2 or whatever they wanted you to, and we get to position and he said, this is where we're going to dig in. So what they would do, Steve, they would form that circle like the old cowboys and Indians. They would form a circle and then we would mark off where our holes are going to be, and in the middle they would mark off where your commanders was going to be if we were going to stay there. And of course the first thing that went up, we carried an American flag with us. I mean, that was something. That's why it bothers me when they burn that thing, because we carried that with us, and one of the first things to go up, we'd get a stick or something and put up that American flag in the middle, and then we would dig in a hole in the front, one in the back, one here, one in the back, so they would be all the way around in a circle, but there would be one in between 2 holes in the front, there would be one behind. So if they got through there, you would have somebody in the middle. We would dig in, guys would start digging the holes, maybe 2 guys on each hole would start digging where we wanted it, and then they would, Chinook would come out, one of those big Chinook helicopters, you know, the double blades, and they would come out and drop concertina wire if we were going to be there for a while, take off, and we would pull that concertina wire out and run that all the way around our perimeter where we were at, tie it together, 2 rows on the bottom and 1 on top, and tie it all together. So if they came up that hill, they're going to have to get through that 3 strands of concertina wire, then through your hole, and then on the inside. So that's what I said. A lot of times when they attacked us, if they did breach the perimeter, it's because they threw in rockets and mortars.
Blow holes
to
in the
begin
wire.
Right. One of the most horrendous attacks that I was in as far as rockets, my hole, I was on a hill and my hole was facing this way and I could see down the hill. And it wasn't quite dark yet. It had got dusk and our holes were dug in. We had concertina wire around us. What I didn't know, the rubber was behind us, and over there was a spotter, and we didn't know it. It was a Vietnamese spotter was in a tree, amen, spotting everything. So I didn't realize what was happening. I had my shirt off, hotter and all, everything. The guys were dug in. We hadn't put out night security yet. I mean, people were watching, but, you know, no gunfire, no nothing. So we were caught a little bit off guard because I heard a noise and boom, and I stood up I stood up and I thought, well, what's that? And the smoke hit out there. Well, I looked at that smoke and I thought, well, where did that come from? Because I didn't hear the mortar tube and I couldn't figure it out. Well, the VC had somehow shot a smoke in.
A marker flare?
And it just went boop, boop. And I thought, well, how'd that happen? Where'd that come from? You know, I didn't hear our mortar tubes in the middle. I didn't hear it. And all of a sudden, over in that rubber, on the back of a truck, we found out later, they had one of those rocket systems set up. And all I heard was boom, 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 boom. I don't know if there was 8, 10, or 12 of them, but they went boom, 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 so loud that I jerked my head around. That whole side of that sky lit up. And I dived for that hole. And before I could probably even get to the bottom of my hole, if there was 12 of those, they had already slammed into our perimeter. They were so close. They just slammed into that perimeter. Thank God none hit my hole, or I wouldn't be here. But they tore that perimeter up. And I could not believe that that even happened. You know, that they could do that, get a truck that close. But anyway, our commander, they were already in touch with. The Air Force, I didn't realize what was happening because when I got up out of that hole, we were already receiving ground attack. Now, the reason I think that I'm alive today is because the small unit hit from our side. And the main force, when this one started hitting, the main VC force came through that rubber, running through that rubber, coming across that side in a human wave. Well, they say one of those rockets hit a hole and killed 5 men in that hole, so that hole was open.
5 of your men.
5 of our men. So that hole was open for a large contingent of those Vietnamese to get inside our perimeter. Now, a lot of them didn't make it across the airstrip. We were talking about death, talk about getting hard. I saw a lot of American dead, but I saw hundreds and hundreds more of VC regulars and North Infantry. I saw hundreds of VC bodies piled up because these guys made that human wave. Well, some of those guys had rallied over there because they began to fire at them and take out a whole bunch of those guys even before they made it across that little old, may not even been used, a little airstrip thing, but they came out of the rubber. And these guys over here, when they came up that hill we were up, they didn't even make it inside the perimeter. They didn't make it upside the hill. But the ground attack was repulsed. We lost guys, but I can testify to this fact, and I've said it hundreds of times. We never lost a battle. They may have said we lost the war. I don't agree with that, but when that fight was over with, that particular fight that day, the South Vietnamese came in with trucks, soldiers. And they began to go around policing up the dead. The Air Force came in and strafed them rubber plantation with CBUs, you know, when it drops out of the jet. And
CBU?
It's like a big silver container thing that comes out of the jet. And when you're on the ground, it looks like it's just lazily
just
coming out.
Down.
And when it got right over that rubber, it goes, and all of a sudden there's this, sounds like about 100 hand grenades. I said, come on, get it. Well, I was pumped in. You know, there was a lot of action going on. And so there were over 300 Vietnamese dead that day.
Do you remember when this was?
Oh, golly. It would have been, I'm going to say maybe October of '67, I'm thinking.
Okay.
I'm not real good with dates. The same area that we were at that I'm talking about now was, it might have been, it was a bad area. I do know that. I think I wrote it in my report that I was wounded in '67 walking through the rubber. And I'm telling you, I was walking, but I couldn't feel the ground because I thought, well, it may be my last patrol, because every patrol that went out had been hit somehow. And they said, we're going all the way to that village that day. And I told my lieutenant, I said, we can't go, man. I said, I'm telling you, we can't go. And I even cussed a little bit. He said, we got orders, we got to go. I said, we can't go, I'm telling you. Every patrol was being hit less than 700, maybe 800 meters out of this perimeter. You can't make it. And what I was doing was trying to stall time because I didn't want to die, but I didn't want him to know I was scared either. And then he cussed back. He said, I liked the guy. He said, Sergeant, he said, we're taking a patrol out and that's it. Boy, I was so mad I turned around and said, get your gear on. We're going on patrol. And I was a cuss and told the guys to get their gear on. And I remember that. But, of course, you can see that I lost my Alpha team leader that day, my Bravo team leader. I don't know where they lived or died. They dusted them off. I've never seen them since. Nobody ever said they lived or they died. Most of the names I can't hardly remember. Lord forgive me. I remember the name of Goins. But they mortared us in the rubber, and they've never done that before. I mean, when we're walking through the rubber, American soldiers, we never had that before as far as my outfit, because they told us you don't have to worry in the rubber because the French are paying the Vietnamese to leave the trees alone. The French influence was there. I saw them. So I thought, well, we surely be all right going through the rubber to that village. And we got mortared that day in the rubber. And the first one hit the tree, and I was showered with thousands of, felt like toothpicks. Just showered, lazily, falling everywhere. Well, I had maybe 5 guys were wounded. I was wounded and didn't even know it. And that's due to the action that was going on, because we started pulling back and taking the wounded with us. We would stop and fire, cover fire. We'd pull back, fire. We'd pull back, fire, till we got back to the perimeter. Well, by the time they got back into the perimeter, my guys that were wounded had already been dusted off. I went over and sat down on a sandbag, and I was shaking about like this. I remember that, just shaking. And shaking and shaking and shaking. And I thought, oh, man, what just happened? So when I went to move, I said, oh, something's sticking me in my back. And the guy said, well, there's a hole in your shirt. I said, you're kidding. Well, it was like you'd a real thin knife blade stuck right in my shoulder blade. And I'm saying that because I didn't know it. It really didn't hurt. Again, I say there I was in the right place. My shoulder blade stopped it from doing any severe damage.
So this was shrapnel stuck in your back?
Yeah, shrapnel, and I was so, didn't even know it.
So this is around October, November 67?
Right, I believe that's the time frame. I know October for that one was October.
Okay.
But
what about January 68? What do you remember about that?
Well, January, the last 4 months of 68 for me was the worst, no matter what went on. The mortars, the attacks, the death and destruction, for me, the last 4 months were probably harder than all of them.
That would have been January, February, March, and April of 68.
Right. It got worse. The ferocity intensified. And, of course, I'm coming home in April. Maybe that added to it.
Where were you in January? Do you remember?
January, we were, we were doing patrols up in the 3rd Corps area, which is up around, like you're in Tay-Ninh. That's where Like Hayes at, that 3rd Corps area. We did a lot of Cambodian stuff all through there. And at times I felt like I said, why don't you just paint a target on me and put me out here? I could go through hundreds and hundreds of times that I felt like I just, let's throw some meat in there and see if the shark could come and get it. And I was the bait. But I felt that way, Lord forgive me. But we were doing a lot of fighting. And in January, I can't remember the date. Our sister unit, the 2nd of the 28th, I was in the 1st, got ambushed really bad, and I can't remember the date for that. But I know we participated in going down to try to help them rescue them, and we did that. And they took a pretty good beating. And but it just seemed like we were doing the same things, a lot of S&Ds, and we did a lot of airborne assaults in. But by February, it had intensified to the fact that I thought, well, I'm going to die. And I thought, man, I just got a few months left. I thought, man.
Were you aware generally that that there was I mean, you mentioned that you were aware of increased ferocity.
Mm-hmm.
Were you aware that there was an offensive going on at that point? Because that would be Tet.
Yeah, nobody ever really walked up and said, hey, you know, I'd heard terms, but nobody ever said, hey, every Vietnamese in the world's going to be down here. We just didn't have that, and I'll explain that here in a minute. Either they didn't tell us. I feel like some of the things we weren't told, and I felt like they knew. And especially in February, this is why I say they had to know, but we didn't, because they brought us from north down to Saigon. And at the time that we choppered in, all I knew was we were going out on another mission. And we airborne assaulted in, jumped off, no enemy. They said there would be enemy there. We jumped off, no enemy. I thought, well, what's going on? Once our whole unit got out, we had Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie, and I was in Charlie Company, and we were on point the first day. So we got off of there, Charlie Company on point. We were first there, no enemy. I didn't know what was happening. So once they all got on ground, we put up security, and I thought, well, we're going to dig in here. That's what I thought. And the word came down, we're going to move 5,000 meters. I thought, oh man, why didn't they just chop us down there? So we get together, everybody gets all the gear back, we're all ready to go again. We move out in file, 10 meters apart, a file on this side and a file over there about, 20, 30 feet apart. Stay in case you get mortared. So we move out, and my captain's up there, and I'm just going along with him, and they said, be careful, there's enemy here, and it's supposed to be a bad area, and, terms they use. So, nothing. So we walk 5,000 meters and still nothing. So I get there, and I remember a Vietnamese graveyard there, and they said, we're going to dig in here. I said, are they sure? And I did a lot of cussing by then. I said, yeah, they're going to dig in here. So I thought it was cool. There was a laterite headstone here, so they're going to dig in. So I thought, well, hey, I'll just use that from the front of my hole and dig in that. So I did. We just dug down 6 foot, put my firing ports on either side of that, and used that laterite headstone in case there was RPGs or anything, rocket propelled grenades that would come in. Now that I look back about it, I thought, boy, that wasn't very good, even letting us dig in like that. So anyway, we dug in. They said, get ready, the enemy's coming, no enemy. This is February. So we get ready, all night long, no enemy. I said, what's up here? Nobody said to us, Saigon surrounded. We got up, and because we had point the night before, they put Alpha on point, Bravo, and then me, Charlie, behind. And they said, we're going to move out. We're early in the morning. We moved out. They left the skeleton crew there. We moved out. I'm walking along, not knowing where I'm at. I get to this road, and my whole tour, I've never seen anything like it, motorbikes. So I said, where in the blank are we at? And he said, we're 2 miles from Saigon. We're going in. I said, really? Well, my first thought was, Lord forgive me, was some good-looking women and some real good booze. That's what I thought. And so we crossed that highway. They had to stop traffic. We crossed that road, got both units moving. We turned left once we got across and headed toward Saigon. So now it's bright and sunny. It's nice. All I'm thinking about is a good-looking woman and some real good booze. And it's so lackadaisical by then. I mean, there's jungle, but there's little houses and little things, and it gave us a false atmosphere that everything is kosher. And I'm going along, and we got, I think, about a mile outside the city, maybe, something like that, I was told. And what they did, they were set up, and I wasn't told that the Vietnamese had surrounded Saigon, these North Vietnamese units, but they ambushed our point. Well, when it started, I could hear, now I'm in the rear, I could hear the noise, but I thought, what's happening? And I remember these great big banana-looking leaves, and pew, and the bullet, and pew. I thought, what is going on? Pew, pew. I could hear that. But it was far enough away I could hear fighting, but it really didn't sound that bad. So in a little bit, my radio man said, Sergeant Dyer, the captain wants you up front. And I looked at him, and I hesitated for a moment. I thought, why do he want me up there? Well, I was senior squad leader out of that company, and they radioed for me all the way in the back. So I thought, why does he want me up there? So I said, well, come on, guys, let's go. So I took what squad I had 8 men, and we took off toward the front, following the point out. When we got up so far, it was all pandemonium. I saw my captain over there, and oh, it was awful, and I saw bodies laying around. So I just ran over there to him, spread the squad out, and I ran right over to him and got down there, and there was a tree beside me, and I said, what's going on? And he looked at me, his eyes were big, and he said, I'm calling artillery in up to 75 meters. And I thought, well, we're holding our own. That's my thought, was we're holding our own, which I thought we did. So that day began the worst fight I think I was ever in my whole life.
Friday, August 1st, 2008. I'm Steve Brown with the Cantigny First Division Oral History Project. We are in Louisville, Kentucky with Gary Dyer, and we've been discussing the events of February 19th, February 20th, 1968. You guys have been choppered in, and you're on the outskirts of Saigon, and you have come under attack. Your captain has called you back in because he's getting ready to call in artillery. You want to go ahead?
Well, yeah, he called me to the front. He called my squad, which was 2nd Squad, 3rd Platoon. And being the senior squad leader in that company, I think that's why he called me up, because he thought once I got there, I'd know what to do. Well, I knew what to do, but...
Do you think he was at a loss for what to do?
He was. It's because of they were being overwhelmed. I didn't realize it, but it was a battalion, I was told, of North Vietnamese. I can't verify the number. He said 168 Alpha Battalion of the North Vietnamese Army. All I do know that they were there. They were ready for us, and that's where they got the advantage, because we were ambushed. They walked us right into it. And again, nobody ever said, hey, they're there, get ready for such a fight. I just walked into it almost so lackadaisical. I had my gear, but I didn't realize they were there. Well, when they began the fight, when he called me to the front, that began my fight to even live, to get out of there. And I had a machine gunner and ammo bearer. That's what Stevie was, the guy in the picture with me. He was the ammo bearer. Daryl Pointer from Illinois. He was from Illinois there. I've talked with his sister. He was my machine gunner, so I got them in position so we could begin to fight. I didn't realize that most of Alpha, that was on point, Alpha Company, the first lieutenant, their senior aide man, their platoon sergeant, those guys had been killed outright by the fight. They had just literally took Alpha apart, our point element, and I didn't realize it at the time, because all I saw was gunfire and things of this nature. RPGs began to come in. And I believe as I look back, there was a house to the right, off to my right, and to this day I believe I wanted them to hit that house. And they wouldn't do it. I said, put artillery on that house, because I think that there's a spotter in that house. And they wouldn't do it because it was a French house. I said, I don't care what it is. I said, they're spotting us from there because they're really putting stuff in. You know, it's just like they knew where to put it. And my guys were doing their job. They were doing a real good job. We took some positions out. I won't go into all the battle, because I can tell you they did a good job. They took out a lot of North Vietnamese. My machine gunner did excellent. I don't know how long this fight went on, but it seemed like it was going on forever. I mean, it's like we were there for all day. And I couldn't even give you a time frame. But I do know that my squad did what they were supposed to. At that point in time, at one point, I didn't see anybody for a long time except my men. I don't know where guys were. I don't know if they'd been wounded. and it became a fight for survival. Just to live yourself, it became that fight. Well, after we took out a lot of North Vietnamese units, what I didn't realize that my captain, they had pulled back to a berm back there, and I didn't realize it. They were trying to, I guess, bring the artillery and stuff into play for us. Because later on he said, I saw you, I knew you were still alive because he saw what was going on, and I lost sight of him. Like I say, all I saw was my men. Well, after doing our job, taking out a lot of positions, something, I'm not sure, hit the, sorry. Anyway, something took out my machine gun and ammo bearer. So it must have been an RPG maybe, I don't know. But it was hard enough to take both of them out at once. So that day, it sticks a lot because I lost two good friends. But anyway, it became a point that even though we were taking a lot of the enemy out, I remember something hitting this tree close to me. Now again, I say it's like an RPG because that thing hit and knocked me over backwards into a ditch. And I laid in that ditch for a few minutes, but it was like slow motion. You know, like everything was going slow motion, and I fell in that ditch of water, and there was mud and junk falling on me, and I was laying in that ditch thinking, man. And I must have been dazed for just a little bit because I was laying there, and finally I got back up, and I said, whoa. And the battle was still going on, and that's when I realized that the guys around me, maybe it's because I got knocked into the ditch, I don't know, but the guys around me were dead. So anyway, at this point, I had resigned the fact that my time was done on earth. I thought, this is it. I'm going to really die. And I turned around and went over. There was a bank. They had those like an irrigation bank. And I didn't see anybody out of my outfit anywhere except those men that were dead. And I really got scared. I thought, boy, here they come. I'm next. And I had thoughts like I'll never see my mom again and my dad. I thought, I'm really going to die this day. This is why it sticks so dramatic in my mind. It's not just because I was there and I thought I was going to die. And yes, I lost some of my best friends. It was terrible. But I'm here to tell you that as I was against that bank on my knees, I had my 16. I don't know where my radio man was. I didn't have a radio. I was there. It was like I was in all by myself. I was in this battle. And no way to get out, no radio. I thought I'm really going to die. And when I looked up, now this may sound weird, but it was like a hole opened up and somebody looked at me. And I was terrified, and instantly when I saw this vision or whatever you want to call it, I looked at him and I said, wow, who's that? And I got peace just like I've got right now. And I thought, who is that? Now this may sound crazy to some, but maybe it was an angel, but whoever it was, I knew had come to help me. Because I went from terror to peace just like that. Never spoke a word, never said anything to me, but I just knew that somehow I could get out of this battle alive, and I knew how to do it. So I just got up, there was firing, and I ran to this ditch, and I dived into this ditch, and I could hear a machine gun firing at me, and I thought, well, why didn't it hit me? So I hit this ditch of water, and I'm looking around for my own men. Where are my men? Where is any men? Any American soldiers? Of course, a lot of them were dead. And so I just somehow knew what to do. So I started down this ditch, and there was a machine gun going tuck, 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 tuck. So I thought, well, if I can get to my unit somewhere, and I go down this ditch, and I ran upon a guy that was had a wound here, just like if you tear the flesh off of him, right here. and his shirt was torn, and he was sitting there and he said, "We're going to die, we're going to die." And I said, "No, we're not." Now, the reason I'm telling you the story is that because I believe that the Lord got me out of that battle, not only saved me, but he got me down to the end of that ditch where that guy was at. Because I told him, "No, we're not," because I went from being terrified to having some form of my mind that I can do what needs to be done. And I took the wounded man. I couldn't tell you his name today. I don't even know who the man was. One of our men. And away we went. I went down to the end of that thing, and I started out, and there was a guy with a radio down there. I said, "Give me your radio." Excuse me. I picked up his radio, and all I could hear was Vietnamese on the radio. He was really scared, and I said, "We're getting out of here." So that day in February, and why it retains so much is because when I came off of that battlefield that day, there were 4 of us. One wounded, a radio operator, and another man. All those guys had been like me, like they were going to die. Well, when we got to this, like a tree line in the jungle, I broke through that tree line, and when I looked to my left, I saw my captain, and I saw what was left of my outfit over here. And I remember putting the wounded guy down, and I don't know what the other guys did, but I fell over backwards onto the ground. Did not have the strength to stand, did not have the strength to talk. I remember laying on the ground going, no strength left in my body. And my captain runs over and he says, "I knew you were alive. I saw you." So he's telling me all this stuff, and I'm laying there and I can't talk. And that's why I give God all the credit, because my strength was gone. But he allowed me to get off the battlefield and bring 3 with me. To this day, I couldn't tell you who they were. I don't know where they're at. I hope they're testifying someday about the goodness of God. But that day is the day that we had to form back up. They took our unit, what was left of it. They brought in the 2nd, I think it was the 2nd of the 28th, I believe, that came in. And they asked me and the lieutenant if we would go back in with their units and go back into that area and show them where that ambush had taken place. And if there was any enemy in there, to take them on, shoot them, do what needed to be took. And I really didn't want to go back in. But I didn't want them guys to know I was scared again. And I said, okay. And nothing in me wanted to go back, but we did. So my lieutenant took one side, and I got with the other side. This is a whole fresh outfit they brought out, 2nd of the 28th. And I went back in, and those guys were ready for action. They wanted to fight so bad, and all I wanted to do was get out. But I went back in with them. We went back to that area where that fight had began, and I guarantee you, when I looked where we had fought, it looked like the moonscape. There was dead bodies, VC, American, but it had looked like, you know how the moon looks, popped, cratered. Trees were ripped in half, trees were gone. That area was almost, they had tore it apart with, I'm assuming the jets came in later with jets. But the saddest part was when I found the senior aid man, and Lord forgive me, I can't remember his name. But he was just laying on the ground looking at the sky, and I got down beside him and didn't have time to cry. And he'd been there 11 and maybe a half months, ready to go home. And there he lay, just looking at the sky. I thought, man, he was a gung-ho medic. That little guy, you talking about him, he was gung-ho. You could see him running around with a .45 sometime. He'd take care of the men, but they would shoot our medics. So he'd carry that .45, and boy, it really got a hold of me. So they asked us if we would, they're calling in a helicopter for me and my lieutenant, if we would take the senior aid man out with us. And I said, okay. So they brought a chopper in. We laid him just flat on the floor. There was nowhere to put him, and we sat on the floor with him, and they choppered us out to take us home or back to our place. And I was looking at him laying there, and I said, somebody please put something over his face. And, you know, his eyes were open, and he just, tough guy, but I couldn't remember his name. But anyway, my captain had observed what my outfit did and what I had done, and I didn't know he was going to do it.
What he said was, you guys are in a battalion minus sweep operation, and your lead element was crossing an open field when it received heavy automatic weapons, machine gun fire, and rocket fire from a well-concealed Viet Cong force. Sergeant Dyer moved among his men, exposing himself to hostile rounds as he directed their fire for maximum effectiveness. His squad covered the withdrawal of the rest of the battalion when airstrikes and artillery fire were about to be employed, which is what you referenced earlier.
Yes.
Sergeant Dyer then moved his squad forward in a counterattack on the insurgents when the air and artillery fire had ceased. With complete disregard for his personal safety, he moved across an area raked by enemy fire to reach a casualty who lay in a hostile kill zone. This is the gentleman you talked about earlier, wounded in the shoulder. Although openly exposed to the insurgents' fire, he quickly succeeded in evacuating the wounded soldier to a location of relative safety in which he could be treated. Sergeant Dyer immediately returned to an area of heavy enemy contact and continued to lead the assault, during which his squad completely overran several Viet Cong positions. The extraordinary aggressiveness and courageous perseverance of Sergeant Dyer during the perilous situation were instrumental in inflicting heavy casualties upon the enemy and significantly contributed toward the successful outcome of the encounter. That's from your citation of the award of the Silver Star. So that's what he observed.
Yeah, I didn't even know he was looking.
In
fact, I didn't know I was getting that till. That's why I say I had a great outfit. They took out a lot of positions. In fact, the sister of that Darrell Pointer, they wouldn't talk. I wanted to talk to their mom and dad, and the dad's already passed away. I said, "You've got to let me talk to them," and they wouldn't do it. It just hurt too bad. I said, "You've got to know these guys were good." I mean, we were all 18, 19, 20 years old, but I said, these guys were good. They were holding their position when others moved out. You know, that day I couldn't find anybody. My guys were doing, I don't know where the other guys were at, but we were doing a job, and mine was just, mine was survival. I mean, you go to Vietnam fighting for America, but you find out you're fighting to survive.
What rank were you when you got to Vietnam?
I was a private, one stripe.
And by this time, by February, you're
in 6 months
sergeant.
I was a E5.
How did that happen?
Well, I think when Sergeant Paul E. Rayleigh came to my house 37 years later, we were talking, and I said, you know, there was actually a guy in the outfit that had been there longer than me. And his name was Bolte, and he was a taller guy. And I told Sergeant Paul, I said, I figured, you know, that he would have got it. I thought, why did they pick me? See, because it was a battlefield commission. I was sitting at the foxhole, and they called down and said, send Dyer up. I thought, well, okay, boy, what's up now? And, you know, little did I kind of had a hard attitude, you know. But I did my job. Even though I had a hard attitude, if they told me to take my squad and go there, I went. They said, we're going to that village. I might have said we're going to die, but we went. And again, not bragging, it's just, I just had that instilled with me that in training that when you got to move, you got to move. And sometimes I'd have to jerk a guy and say, you got to move. I know it looks bad, but if you stay here, you're going to die anyway. But Paul E. Rayleigh, I said, when they called me up, he said, stand at attention. The captain was there. This is out in the jungle at the command CP. I looked at him, I said, what? I mean, you don't salute out there. You don't stand at attention. You wear black stripes, you know, to keep, you don't wear big yellow stripes. You wear little black stripes here. He said, come on, just get some kind of attention. I said, okay. You know, I'm dirty. And he said, you're now a sergeant? I said, whoa, what? I said, ooh. And he pinned those sergeant stripes on my collar. Well, that was a big thing. I thought, man, thank you, a battlefield commission. And again, I'm not telling you I was a great soldier, but I did my job. Maybe he saw something that, this guy can lead. This guy can do something. But Paul E. Rayleigh said, he said, I told you I was going to help you stay alive. And he said, he said, I put your name in the hat before I left. He said, I told him that you'd make a good squad leader. And the other guy that I thought that might have got it, why didn't he get it? He had a bad attitude. And no matter what you think, no matter if you cuss, if they tell you, I had a machine gunner one time before this one, and we were getting ready for a battle, and I told him I went over there and I said, I've already been over there once, and we were receiving gunfire. What they were doing was running the enemy this way. So I went over there and I said, bring that machine gun over here, and the ammo bearer, get over here now and put that machine gun out. Well, the lieutenant let him be machine gunner against my wishes. So I ran back across that clearing to that tree, and the fire was, and I turned around and looked, he's still over there. That's 80% of your squad firepower. So I ran back over there, and I told him, I got down, I said, I've been over once and back, and I'm getting ready to go again. I said, if you don't move this time, I'm going to shoot you myself. Well, when I turned around, Steve, and made that run, he was coming. I said, man, that's your firepower. So anyway, I think Sergeant E. Rayleigh said he put a word in for me that I'd make a good one, and whatever they saw that day, I was glad to get it, but he said, now you're squad leader of 3rd Platoon, 2nd Squad. And I thought, oh no, because I thought, now am I responsible for Gary? I got to take care of those guys. If somebody gets hurt, they wouldn't know. So I can tell you, I am glad to have been in the Big Red One. They call it the Bloody Red One. I think it's one of the best outfits that the Army had, not only in Vietnam, but especially in World War II. They always said they were one of the best fighting units they had. They were a little mischievous in the rear of the gear. And of course we were too. Whenever they let us in, we got a little.
How much longer were you in Vietnam after this Tet experience?
After the Tet, I left, and my getting out time was April the 23rd of '68. That's why I say January, February, and March. And I actually felt if I'd have stayed another day in Vietnam, I would have died. That's just a feeling I had. Because when they told me, you stay alive, it's like that clock was set. And I had to make it to the 2/3 to 68 to get out of there. And I said, boy, if I had another day, I don't think I'd have made it.
What was it like when you got home?
We landed in California. I remember that. We got off of this plane. I mean, everything seemed fine. I got off of this plane in California. They told me that they would put me up for 6 weeks in a cool down period. And I wasn't happy with that, but I thought, well, I probably need to be put up for 6 months. But I'm talking about you're in a plane full of guys that have been in the CAV, those guys on those APCs and infantry, guys have been in combat. We needed help, but you didn't have nowhere to get it. So I get off of the plane thinking they're going to give me a uniform, they're going to put me up for 6 weeks. Okay, fine, I'm home. We piled off of the plane, and most of us got down and kissed the ground. We just thankful to be in the United States. I get up, I'm in California, somewhere in California, and I get up, and there's a big fence over here to my right. And I look, and there's a whole bunch of people over there. And I hear a bunch of noise, and I'm looking, I thought, what is all that? So the E6 was there, and I was looking, I said, what is that? And they were giving us the finger, pardon my language. There were signs and all kind of junk, and I said, what is going on? And he said, they're here. Every time a plane lands, they're here. They're protesters against the war. And I was thinking, all I wanted to do was get home. I'm this guy that wanted to not hurt nobody, and I had to, but all I wanted to do was get home. Don't you understand? Then I got mad. The more they hollered, the more I got mad, and I told that E6, I said, you give me a 16, I'll clear the crowd out for you. He said, I wished I could, but they let it happen. So we paraded into the building, and being my last name is a D, they took A to D first. So I go in, I'm waiting on somehow to get to this 6 weeks cool down period. These guys are pretty wild. So I get in there, they start measuring me up, fitting me, checking all kinds. I said, what are you doing? He said, we're giving you a new uniform. You can wear Class A's and blouse them in your boots. You've got the privilege of doing that now. and had all my patches on and my medals, you know. So again, they was instilling that. You're thinking you're like John Wayne, you know. I got them medals there. That means something, you know. Even if I had to go, it means something. I got a silver star, bronze star. At least I got something to show. I wasn't bragging, but somebody take a look. I wasn't hiding in the hospital either, you know, or I said I had to do something. And I got brand new uniform, new boots, bloused them, got real cocky, had my hat on. I thought I'm ready to go, and the guy comes out, and they were standing there, and he said, "Here's your orders." And I said, "What for?" He said, "You've got a 30-day leave. Report to your next duty station." So I went from 4 hours in there getting a new uniform to being released out onto the public without a 6 weeks cool down period. So we walk out, and there's 4 of us together, and this guy that came in from the CAV units with me, well, I knew he was unbalanced. He was one of those men you could look at his eyes and you knew something was wrong. He'd either been so close to death he'd been there and back, but something was wrong with him. And there was one cab there, and this old fella pulled up in the cab, and he said, "Let's get a cab." I said, "Just get me to an airport. I don't care where you go, just get me anywhere." It didn't matter, because I've been used to staying outside the whole year anyway. It didn't matter if it rained, snowed, what, I didn't care. I could live outside. So we get in this cab, and this old fella's in there, and he backs up, and I think it was an old Ford. But I'll just give me the airport. I said, "Just get me there." And these other guys, whatever they want to do. So we're getting there, and this guy, I don't know if he did it on purpose, I'm not sure, but he said, "I'm having trouble with this cab." Well, the cab guy's in the front. This is a true story. He turns around, looks at him, he said, "If you don't get this cab moving, I'm going to kill you." And the old guy said, "Whoa, wait a minute. And he pulls into a gas station, and I can't remember what he did. He tinkered around or whatever. But the guy was serious. I'm talking about a guy that...
The air calf guy.
And they unleashed this guy. God forgive us. I think myself today, is he dead? Did he kill somebody? I don't remember his name, but he definitely was, really unbalanced. And here I was a little myself, but this guy was way off. So thank God the cab driver gets it going. We get in, he gets us to the airport. I'm flying military standby, so they said, "We don't have any flights to Indianapolis." I said, "Where can you get me?" "Just anywhere." "Well, how about Cincinnati?" I said, "I don't care. It's like, hey, just move on out, see." So I caught a plane right off the bat for Cincinnati, not Indianapolis, Cincinnati. And I landed... They dropped me off somewhere. I forget where it was at in the airport. And I get out, and I said, all I want to do is I'm trying to get to Indianapolis. So I'm at this airport, and the next flight is out. I go up. I'm military standby. I'm there waiting to get on. And all these people rush up, pushing me out of the way, rush to get on. And I said, "Hey, I've got a ticket." She said, "No, you're standby. It's full." I said, "Okay. When's the next one?" "Well, whatever, an hour or two." So they take off. So I wait and I wait and I wait. Same thing the next time. I'm pushed out of the way. Everybody gets on. No, they don't care. Get out of the way. Just get out of my way. I said, "Hey, I'm trying to get home." They said, "I'm sorry." So I spent all night in that airport thinking I'm going to get on military standby. So I walked down. The next flight's later. So I walked down to the end of this thing, and here's this great big enormous building on the end of and I looked down there and I said, "Hey, that looks pretty nice." So I walked down. I got on my gear on, I walked down, I popped down, I sat down. The guy walks up and he said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yeah, I want a beer." He said, "Well, how old are you?" I said, "I'm 19. He said, "I can't serve you." I said, "I don't care." I said, "I just got back from Vietnam, man. Been killing gooks." And that's what he thought. He said, "I'm sorry. You'll have to get out of here. I can't serve you." I said, "I've been drinking beer the whole time." He said, "You got to get out." I said, "Okay, shove it or whatever." So forgive me for my bluntness. I'm sorry. So I walk out of that. This is a true story. And I walk all the way down to the other end. There's another little thing, but it's a little bar, a little round bar stools and a hot dog looking thing. I walk in there and I flop down. The guy walks up and he said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yeah, I want a beer." He said, "Okay, what kind you want?" It's a true story. I said, "I just got back from Vietnam." He said, "Here, man." He gave me a hot dog. So I sat down there and I had, I don't know how many, 4, 5, 6 beers, which ain't hurting me because I drank whenever I could. But anyway, I get my beer and I go down. I keep getting bumped off. So I get so mad I went up and I said, "Sell me a full ticket. Take this ticket and jam it." And she said, "Well, you might get on the next one." I said, "Honey, I've been bump. I said, "I'm paying you the money. Get me a regular ticket." And that's how I got out of that airport. Again, I didn't think a whole lot about it. I thought, well. So we finally get to Indianapolis, and where my mother was there. And my parents had wonderful parents. But my mom, when I went there, she said, "Well, you're home now. This is the feeling. Put your little tent up, you're back home from Boy Scout camp, honey." That's the feeling. And I don't know how to fit back in. I'm only saying that because I had wonderful people around me, but I do not know how to fit back in. Hey, what's the matter with you? Put your little tent up, get your little boots, put your stuff up, and here, man, you went, just a few days from popping caps on people, throwing hand grenades, thinking you're going to die, to I'm sitting here and people saying, so they asked me, "So what do you want?" I'm sitting in front of the room. I said, "I want beer and I want it now." I can remember that very vividly. So my wife at that time was there, and I've repented about this stuff 100 times, I guess. But anyway, they went and got a bunch of beer, and I drank a bunch of beer. And like I say, my wife was, I don't know, I can't tell you if she's good or bad, but I know I wasn't real good. We just did not fit together. I couldn't fit back into society, and I didn't know how. So the very next day, I remember getting up in the morning and firing the car up, got the keys to the car. Now, this is my first day back, and I back in reverse, and they run out of the house, said, "Where are you going?" They're hollering at me, and I drove through the yard. I can show you the house in Seymour, Indiana. I drove through the yard, right over the curb, and right on to town. Went to town, got wild. But needless to say, that didn't last a long time. We endured each other for a while, but it was like two different people. If she was here today, she'd probably tell you woke up at night having nightmares, and I hit somebody one time. I said, "Don't you run up and wake me up." I said, "Don't do that. I didn't want to hurt anybody, but you run up and wake me up, you're liable to get one of these upside your head." I don't have that now, thank God. But there was a time frame after the war, coming home, people really didn't give a hoot. And maybe I was trying to look for some kind of recognition. Lord, forgive me. That's why I'm kind of amazed today when people say, "Hey, we want to hear about the war." People just didn't want to hear about it. And if you say anything about it, they act like they didn't believe you anyway. So I said, "Well, so what?" So they quit talking and they go get drunk. So I did that for about 10 years. 10 years of progressively getting worse drinking. And I lost family. In fact, I lost everything I had except my job and my life. And I say that because I feel like God let me reduce down to where, when I got to that point, I had a motorcycle. And I think He let me get to that point to where it says, "Now you're right on the bottom. And where are you going to go?" Because, I remember sitting in Columbus, Indiana one day, and all this time inside of me is what my mom instilled in me. It's what the training instilled in me. It's what Vietnam did. And then if you add alcohol to it, I said before I got saved, I was sitting in a house to the west of the Columbus Hospital, I believe it was, sitting in this little house with a bottle of Jack Daniels in one hand, my motorcycle in the front yard, and a pistol in the other. And I never thought about taking my own life, but I guess some things in there ramble. So I thought, I had that pistol loaded. I thought, I wonder what that would be like. And I had been drinking. It was Sunday morning. And I put that thing up to my head, and thank God I didn't have enough idiosyncrasy to blow my brains out. I pulled that thing away, and I said, "You dumb head." Because, what if it went off or I'd jerked or something. But it got that close, and I never meant for it to be that close. So that was toward the end there of just losing and breaking down. And most folks, really, I'll be honest with you, I don't think they knew what to do with you, because there wasn't a place where you could just bop into, in the early years, say, hey, I'm a Vietnam veteran, I need help. And most people would say, hey, you're a Silver Star, I want to buy you another beer. So people were doing for me what they thought was the best. They said, oh man, look at that. Even my own daddy said, look, that boy's a war hero, man, give him a drink. Well, everybody buy me a drink. VFW. Man, that's the last thing I needed was a drink. But cost me everything but my job and my life. And 1978 in October, I broke down and wept. I thought I was going to die, and nobody cared. And I always went down the street to Paul's Tavern in Columbus, and for some reason, there's a building on 2264 Illinois Street. It's a little Pentecostal church. For some reason, I went there. Now, who in the world I'd let my hair get out, everything I dislike. Now, I'm not against long hair. Don't anybody think that. But I always had short hair, see. I always had that military type thing, So I let myself get everything but what I wasn't. Big long beard, long hair, drunk, useless. Everything I didn't want to be, I'd become. But that night, I pulled into that church, and I thought, what am I doing here? And I stood outside crying. Black leather jacket on. I thought, what is going on? And I walked into that church, and when I got in there, those people were praising the Lord, and I thought, what am I doing here? Man, this is the last place I should be. And I got in the back row, and I said, I'm going to die, and you people don't care. I just looked around. They were just singing. I said, you people don't give a hoot about me. I'm going to die, and you don't care. And an 84-year-old man, we became best friends, named Harry Jones, walked to the back. And he stopped there and looked at me, and he said, don't be afraid to go to the altar. And I looked at him, and I said, I ain't afraid of nothing, but I don't know what I'm doing here. And you see, the plan of God had a whole time. That's why he let me go through Vietnam and saved me from Vietnam to help others. And that day, I got up and went to the altar with that old fella. To this day, I thought, man, something. This has got to be something. Like your last mile. We walked down to the altar. He didn't push me or pull me, but I got down there, and I got down beside him. I don't know what I said. I know he was a-praying, but in a few minutes or so, I went like that, and I said, hey, I feel better. This drunken, whiskey-smelling, bike-riding dude turned around and said, I feel better. And he said, good, keep coming back. And I believe that my whole life, by my mother praying and praying for me, those early years that God was trying to get me to the place where he could use me, if that makes any sense. Even though I had to go through my dad being killed, the Vietnam War, a broken marriage. I'm not saying God breaks marriages. I'm just saying I was reduced down to a place that God says, now you'll listen to me. Because I knew he was in Vietnam. I knew when he showed up, he came to help me. And I couldn't tell anybody in the Army. I said, hey, an angel came out and got me off the battlefield. That's why these 3 guys are alive today. I couldn't say that because they'd said, uh-oh, Section 8, we better... I thought they'd lock me up. I really did. I thought if I told you that today, you'd say, well, maybe... But it's a true story, and I've got to give God the credit for the whole life because of what's happened today. I gave my life to the Lord, and I started out passing out songbooks. And then I graduated to driving the church bus, then to playing drums. But it took 10 years after that war before my only regret is that it didn't come sooner.
You ever go back to Vietnam?
I've been back to Vietnam in 2004, and when the Lord asked me to go back, I kind of had an argument session with him. I said, oh, God. And I remember how it was before, and finally I said, God, I'll go back. I didn't take an M16, I didn't take a hand grenade, I didn't take anything but my Bible. I put it in my backpack, wrapped it in plastic because of the rainy season, and I went back. I said, I'll go. And I wrote my last will and testament because of the way it was before. I thought, I'll go preach for you, God, but surely they'll kill me this time. I had that in my mind, Lord forgive me. And I made that out, put it at my desk so that if something happened to me, my wife would find it. And I flew back in 2004, and I did underground church services. God opened the door for me to get in there. I couldn't preach in the open. But actually, they were so good to me, I was astonished that they were that good to me.
The Vietnamese people.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they were, they said, just don't preach. You can have a Bible, but don't preach. And, of course, I slipped around and did some of that. And we won people to the Lord. But it was, I visited their war museum. I told them I was there before. I said I was here. I realized to tear you up, to destroy your country. I wanted to burn every house when I left. I don't care if everybody died in Vietnam, but I said I'm here today, 2004, to tell you I'm no longer your enemy. And they were so good to me. It was, and then I went back in February, actually the same month that I told you about Tet. I flew back to Vietnam February the 18th of this year. I landed on the same day that we choppered in to begin the Tet Offensive as far as that battle I told you about. And I thought, how could I plan that? Because I didn't plan it. I just told the team, I'll go with you. And when the guy called me from New Zealand, he said, if you'll go back, I'll pay your way. I said, oh man, you got to let me pray. So I prayed and God said, go back. And we landed on the 18th. The 19th, I was, is it all right to say, I was preaching an underground church service. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. I was doing a service in Vietnam, and the only reason I'm saying this is that during that service, and I didn't tell you this story, Lord forgive me, but during that service, in one of the battles I was in, I was so mad, and I was so scared that I ran upon a wounded soldier, one of the enemy soldiers, and I was so mad and so scared at the time. He was wounded in the leg, and when I looked at him, it looked like one of our ace bandages. So I just raised up my weapon to shoot the man, which I would have done, and surely had ever meant to be. And a voice, I heard a voice in my ear just said, "Don't do it." And it had such a voice of compassion that I was mad at myself because I couldn't shoot this guy. This is the enemy, and I didn't shoot him. But today, this is a guy's face that I remember. I can see his face today. So I told him in that meeting on February the 19th that I was so glad that I didn't shoot that man, that I felt like the Lord had spoke to me. Well, in the service, the reason I'm telling you, in the back were two men that were North Vietnamese soldiers that were fighting 40 years earlier, fighting us 40 years earlier out there. And they're now preaching the gospel in the underground church in Vietnam and being, if they're caught, they'll be jailed or killed. They came up after the service with tears in their eyes, and the interpreter said, these two men were fighting you 40 years ago out there, and now they give their life to God, and they were so thankful that I told the story about not shooting that guy. And I tell you, I cried because one of them was missing an arm, one of them was missing a hand and an arm, and the other was missing an eye and had scars on his face. But I said, somebody take my picture because they're not going to believe it. So I've got a photo of, I got these two former soldiers hugging me. I wish I brought it, I didn't think. And they're holding their prosthetic hands together in front of me. So before we left, I got their names and their addresses, hopefully one day to write them. You gotta be careful what you say, though. I just can't write them and say, hey, it's good to meet you in church, because if they trace that to them, they can be jailed or put in prison. But it's God, again, orchestrated my 2008 visit, because I thought 40 years earlier, here I am hugging two guys that we desperately tried to kill each other in a time past. So you see why my view is so changed. I don't have any more hate. I don't have anger. In fact, if there's any concern in me at all now, it's for my two sons that have went to Iraq and back. And one of them said, Dad, they're shooting at me from the mosque and I can't shoot back. And I said, Justin, they mortared us from the Buddhist temples and we couldn't hit the temple because it was a religious building. I said, it's the same thing. You're going through the same thing I did, only Vietnam was jungle and Iraq is sand. To me, it's, when they've come back and told me their experience, I said, it sounds like Vietnam, only you're in the sand. Booby traps, snipers, ambushes, same thing.
Have you had a chance to deal with any counseling of post-traumatic stress disorder from Vietnam or from Iraq in your position as a pastor?
Yes, I've had a few. Not so much like on a. I encountered a guy in Columbus that we talked with, and the first time I talked with him, he said, "Well, I came back all right. Didn't bother me." He said, "I was shot in the arm. See there?" And he had a place in his arm, you know. I said, "It didn't bother you?" "No." And not a bit. Didn't bother me. I said, "Well, I must have been weaker than you." And that bothered me because I thought, am I so weak? But maybe his experiences were different. I don't know. But I will tell you this. The next day, his friend called me up and said, "Gary, after you left, he broke down and cried like a baby. He was lying to you." So see, he was trying to cover that up, you know, and everything. But when he began to talk about it, I always felt this way. If you can get it out, you can get rid of it. If you can get it out, you can get rid of it. So I've had a few. The neighbor across from the church is, he doesn't drink now. He's suffering from Agent Orange. So we've had, in the last year and a half, we've really had a chance to talk. And we talk about war, we talk about, you know, the Agent Orange stuff, and I said, well, you know, I'm refusing it because they sprayed 3.5 million gallons in the Iron Triangle. I mean, just in that Iron Triangle. So in the 3rd Corps area, you can imagine how much they sprayed on the guys in the jungle. But I try to relate to him. I said, you know, those people are still there. The Vietnamese are living in that. They're still there. How bad it is on us, but they're still there. So little by little, just this year, his wife called me the other day. We were talking. She said, we're thinking about coming to your church. So, and it's not that they're not God-fearing people, but I always felt if you got somebody to talk to about your situation, if you can get somebody that, you know, and get that out. Because I didn't used to talk about the war. There's still things that I haven't told you that are there that I don't want to talk about. But if you can get that out, God will help you with it. So I've had a few encounters of being able to talk to him. I'm not telling you it's been great, not a whole lot, but along the line, and people know me now. They say, man, why are you so happy? Why you got so much joy? I said, it's because of the Lord. I said, I wasn't that way. I was the most miserable man. I tell them about putting a pistol to my head one time. I said, when he came in, he made the difference. So it's Vietnam is something that never leaves. It's like a tattoo that never goes away. It's still there. And I guess unless God take it, it will never go away. I hear sights, sounds, smells. I can smell smells. I can hear sights. I cry sometimes. Different things happen. But what God did for me is I don't have to go get drunk. I don't have to think about blowing my brains out. That part's gone. I always call it the hurt part. And I think he could do that for every veteran if we would allow him, or for anybody, as that matter of fact. Those things I've got, I just brought them today so that if I told you I had them, you'd say, yeah, he does, because I know some guys say, hey, I've got this and I've got that. But my wife said, well, it might be a good idea if you bring those, and that way you would know. So it's just something that hangs in and I got them in a little thing. Most people don't know about it, or maybe don't even care about them. Or if they did, they might say, well, what's that? But it was costly. That Silver Star cost me 6 guys. And I hope to meet them one day. I'm sure they're there. Good fellas. So other than that, I haven't seen anybody except the one that drove to my house. 37 years later, I've talked to, oh golly, he was my master sergeant. He's 70-some years old. He lives at Fort Smith, Arkansas. He was like the other gentleman in Korea and Vietnam. He was wounded over there, so we've talked by phone. And he told me one day we had, he said, Sergeant Dyer, Southern boy, he said, Sergeant Dyer, we had over 400 mortar rounds hit that perimeter that day. I said, I didn't know that, but I do know they come. So there's so many things I could tell you. So many ambushes, so many patrols, so many things I could tell you, but I probably motored too much.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to come out today and tell us the things that you have told us. And on behalf of my family and the Cantigny Foundation and Ball State University and myself, we'd like to thank you for your service and say,
Thanks.
welcome home.
I want to thank you guys too. They maybe keep it alive a little bit after we're gone, maybe. Yeah. Thanks a lot.